answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
I woke up this morning, got myself a gun. Mama always said I'd be the chosen one.
The point made by any farmer that you talk to of essentially any good is that there are competitors to American growers. And if you take corn, for instance, Brazil, and that other countries are able to turn to other markets. And even Farmer Bob, who voted for President Trump 3 times, said that there are still long-term consequences of the first trade war. Export markets, buyers overseas who turn to other countries instead of American growers. When you're looking at corn, for instance, 30% of U.S. corn is exported. When you're looking at pork, 25% of pork is exported overseas. And that is what they fear in the months ahead, and exactly what President Trump is looking for in terms of concessions from these vast number of countries that he's now beginning trade wars with.
Well, of course, they want to make a big deal out of how Trump is going to destroy the country with his tariff wars. And why not go right to the farmers? Farmers are at the center of my heart. My grandparents handled farms. I often would work on the farms with them. Actually, they were more cattle ranches, but we also did some crops. But that's the heartland. It's not New Jersey, New York, and very little bit of it in California, except for corporate farmers. But we're talking about family farmers. And, of course, they think, if we can get these people, because these are the basis for Trump's support, these kind of, what do we call them, Americans, Omega Americans. If we can get them to turn against Trump, we will have him back in our clutches, and we will get the Oval Office again. They are so delusional. They're drinking poison water, believe me. Farmers understand the give and take of what they're making their livelihood on. They live with it. They live with the fact that, will God give me rain this spring when I need it? Will he not give me so much water and rain when I'm trying to get my crops out of the field? This is a daily battle for farmers. Can the president help them in some cases? Yes, our government has. We've given, quote, subsidies. Of course, when you start talking about subsidies, a lot of people get upset. You're giving them subsidies. And on the other side, on behalf of the farmers, I would say, subsidies are a God-given right. Yeah, they deserve help when they can't get their crops in for whatever reason. But now, by placing tariffs on countries that want to buy our corn, what they're saying is that we'll have so much corn stored up here and not enough buyers that the farmers won't make as much money. When we talk about short-term pain, a growing season could be considered a short-term pain. Same thing with when it comes to cultivation. But in the end, there will be a market, one way or the other. Now, I do recall decades ago, some of you might recall this, in this nation, we had a glut of cattle. And no other nation was wanting them. They were getting them from Venezuela. They were getting from elsewhere. And, in fact, we were even putting planes. I remember specifically in the panhandle of Texas, cows being loaded onto planes to be flown to Hawaii so they would have more cattle. And there were cases where the prices were down so low, the farmers couldn't afford to keep the cattle to feed them, to get them to market. They were bulldozing large trenches, shooting cattle, dumping them into the trenches. But it comes back around. And when there's a shortage, the prices go up. Everybody gets happy, except for the buyer, the consumer. Look, every time you have to pay something extra for something, there's someone at the other end that's happy. But the problem we've had with the U.S. and other nations when it comes to tariffs, they overimpose tariffs on our goods going in, and they don't do it, or we don't do it, when their goods come in to us. So it means a lot more opportunity for some to decide, you know what, maybe I'll just go make my goods elsewhere and then bring them into the U.S. Trump wants to change that picture. We should, for the betterment of our nation. Thanks for joining us. Hour number one, Larry Connors USA. We're here every Monday through Friday from 6 to 8. And in case you had any doubt about it, oh yeah, I voice opinions on here and analysis. But again, I don't tell you how to think. You're capable of doing that yourself. I will give you facts and details on both sides, and then I will give you an agenda that I have. It may or may not agree with you. That's fine. But I'm not, quote, the news anchor of the years past, because then no one knew my politics, nor should they, because I was delivering factual news, not trying to interject politics. Nowadays, Larry Connors USA, carrying my name, is not just a news program, although we present a lot of items in a news fashion for you. It's coupled with, stormed by sometimes, Larry Connors' opinion. And I'm glad to have you on board for it. So here we are Monday through Friday from 6 to 8. And reminding you, when we're on the air, we are streaming video. You can watch the program. Go to NewsTalkSTL Rumble, Facebook or Twitter, Larry Connors USA Rumble or Facebook. And everything goes up later as a podcast at NewsTalkSTL, LarryConnorsUSA.com, Larry Connors USA Facebook. And get the new app we have. It's a great app, NewsTalkSTL app. It's a brand new one, or update the one you have. It's got what we call the Wheel of Fun on it. You can spin around and you can send messages in and out by text. You can go to pull up previous podcasts using the wheel. You can do all sorts of things. It costs you nothing, and we do not share your information. We need a minimum of information anyway, but we don't share any of it with anyone else for any amount of money. So glad to have you on board, and pass the word to others. You can, by the way, once you have the app, you can also push a single button on it, and it will then share that app with some of your friends, even your enemies. In our second hour, my guest is going to join us on how tariffs will bring more jobs home and be good for Americans. That's what we want. In the meantime, we continue to have the battle inside. Oh, before I do that, Trump, of course, released today how the tariffs are going to work. We'll get into that also more in the second hour. But already this morning, he was pressuring 4 GOP senators ahead of the anti-Canadian tariff vote, accusing them of TDS. You know that. Trump derangement syndrome. It's everywhere. Trump said they have been extremely difficult to deal with. He's talking about Senators McConnell, no surprise. Senator Collins, again, no surprise. Murkowski, no surprise. And Rand Paul. Disappointing, but no surprise. He's sticking to principles that he thinks we should not be continuing resolution. And I think he figures this might be another way to stop it. I couldn't begin to tell you and wouldn't try to tell you exactly what he's thinking. But those are the 4 senators that Trump says continue to battle him on everything he's trying to do, or a lot of it. But one of the things we're doing is still trying to get more illegals out of our country, especially those who came in illegally in the sense that they came across the border. Maybe they've overstayed visas. Maybe they're here on a student visa or a green card. But they're really going after first the worst of the worst. That was made very clear. And yet, despite that, White House advisor Steve Miller says it appears Dems want terrorists in our nation.
We have people criminally trespassing into our country, violating our laws, who are members and associates of the most violent, ruthless, criminal and terrorist organizations on the planet that are implicated through their membership in terrorism. So illegal alien terrorists, and Democrats are saying, please set them free, please fly them back, please let them continue their criminal organization activity. The thing about these organizations, be it TDA or MS-13, is that they are vast networks. They have hitmen, they have drivers, they have associates, they have financial networks, they have traffickers. These are complex organizations.
And you know what? They know how to make everything move if they're back in the country. And they can do it from outside the country. That is why yesterday the Treasury Secretary announced we're going after the Sinaloa cartel, directly their bank funding and their money take up their money, freeze it up, and then that will shut down a lot of their operations. Not entirely, but it's a good step and a very harmful step. But despite all this, again, you've got so many that want to point out that for whatever reason, they think it's wrong that we're trying to take illegals out of our country, forgetting or just ignoring the fact that they are damaging Democrats' constituents as well as Republican constituents. White House spokesman Carolyn Leavitt.
And let me tell you why we've made this commitment. MS-13, may I remind each and every one of you, is a brutal and vicious gang. They raped and strangled a 20-year-old autistic woman to death in Maryland. They hacked 4 people to death with machetes in a park on Long Island. They have kidnapped, sexually tortured, and shot a teenage girl in Texas after she insulted them, allegedly. Killed and mutilated a 17-year-old girl in Virginia, stabbing him 16 times and cutting off his hands. They beheaded and cut out the heart of a man in Washington, D.C. They raped and murdered a 13-year-old girl in California. They sex trafficked a slew of young girls, including one who was just 12 years old. Raped an 11-year-old girl in Brooklyn while her brother was in the room. Sex trafficked a 13-year-old in Maryland and Virginia. These are vicious criminals. This is a vicious gang. And I wish that the media would spend just a second of the same time you have spent trying to litigate each and every individual of this gang who has been deported from our country as the innocent Americans whose lives have been lost at the hands of these brutal criminals.
Sometimes directly, sometimes with the drugs they brought in. One of those who died during the fentanyl that was brought in is Pawn Stars boss Rick Harrison. His son got into fentanyl, had an overdose in 2024. And Rick Harrison is praising Trump for what he's doing, for taking steps to shut all this down. He's had a personal loss. Does it take you to have a personal loss before you get concerned? What about your relatives, your friends, your neighbors? Once again, back to the White House spokesman Steve Miller.
What does the world see? What do the monsters see when they look at those military planes unloading in El Salvador and getting these illegal aliens off our soil, including child rapists, including stone-cold murderers? What does the world see? They see that under Donald Trump, that Americans are not sheep for the slaughter anymore. They see that you don't mess around with our people anymore. It's about damn time, Jesse. It's what Americans voted for. Don't screw with our people. Don't threaten them. Don't attack them. Don't invade them. Do not hurt them in any way, shape, or form, because if you do, God help you. That's the message from the Trump administration, and it's about damn time, Jesse. I've visited enough family members who've had a loved one ripped away, and I'm not going to stand for it. And most importantly, the president, our president, the leader of the free world, is saying America is closed to murderers, gangbangers, and terrorists.
Any of you listening, you want to stand up and join the terrorists and say, oh, I want them in my community? Open up your door. Let them into your house. You want to do that? Hell no. CBS 60 Minutes and Leslie Stahl continue to get severe backlash for her interview with a man who was held by Hamas. She dared ask him, do you think they were really starving you? Or do they just not have enough food for you to eat? Let's go back to the beginning of her slanted report on Hamas and Israel.
Statistics tell the grim story of the October 7th, 2023 Hamas terrorist attack on Israel. 1,200 civilians and soldiers slaughtered that day. 251 taken hostage, men, women, and children. Since then, an estimated 50,000 Gazans have been killed. 12 days ago, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu resumed the bombing of Gaza, breaking a fragile ceasefire that was exceedingly popular with Israelis.
Online commentators blasted the bizarre agenda of the interview, with this person saying, Leslie Stahl is the biggest media hack moron on TV. CBS should be ashamed. She asked a Jewish hostage who had been starved and beaten by Hamas, do you think they didn't have food? Hamas is pure evil and Leslie Stahl is an idiot.
Well, I could second that. And that was a news report on her, Leslie Stahl's initial report on Hamas and Gaza. and Israel. Now let's go back to her actual 60 Minutes interview this most recent weekend when she's talking to the man who said he was being starved to death.
The terrorists became very mean and very cruel and violent.
More so.
Much more so. They were beating me and starving me.
Do you think they starved you or they just didn't have food?
Good God.
No, I think they starved me, and they would often eat in front of me and not offer me food.
Fox News hosts blasted Stoll for the tone-deaf question.
These individuals show up gaunt. They have been tortured in horrific fashion. Was it just that Hamas didn't have food? Leslie Stahl, like what's in your drinking water?
I don't know, but didn't she notice that the hostage takers weren't emaciated?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, what in the actual is going on with that woman? And as he's trying to very calmly educate her on the point that they ate in front of him as he was starving to death. I mean, can you imagine the pain, the physical pain of watching that and knowing your gut is killing you, you haven't eaten in weeks? I'm flabbergasted by it. And all I can think of is maybe she literally didn't study.
And maybe she really is an idiot, as one of the other responses went into the network. I want to tell you and share with you exactly what the plan is, the way it's going down here. Not all Muslims are jihadists. I want you to keep that in mind. And I have a lot of Muslims who are friends. But all jihadists are Muslims. And Muslims who believe in the true, strict Sharia law are not the entire Muslim community. There are Muslim nations around the world that do not practice Sharia law. But here's what's happening in Europe, and we can take a clue from what's happening in Europe and in Britain. Here's a Muslim living in Britain saying, we don't like your laws.
And force the Muslims to take up their British values. Nah, we don't like your culture. We don't like your gambling and your homosexuality and your promiscuity and your man-made laws. We don't like that. I think what we've got is better. We'll keep to that. No thanks. We believe that Islam is the best way of life, and the Islamic way of life is the best. The Sharia is the best law. And we believe sovereignty is only for Allah. And this is why we stick firm to it.
Sharia is the best law. Well, then get out of Britain. Go somewhere where they practice Sharia. Coming up, more of the illegals are actually self-deporting. Why? Lock and load. Ready on the right.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
My sponsor, Wellington Environmental, has helped thousands deal with hazardous materials. Hospitals, offices, schools, even homes. Here's something new. Wellington now offers dustless blasting. This is just like sandblasting, but without all the dust and emissions. Wellington uses everything from ground glass, walnuts, corn, even dry ice pellets. One university had Wellington remove their parking lot striping because dustless blasting is fast and it does not damage the concrete. So as a business or homeowner, I'm sure you could use this process. Industrial tanks, swimming pools, graffiti on buildings. And in fact, Wellington is blasting a Texaco station that will be revised as an historic building. Check the website for details and photos. WellingtonSTL.com. WellingtonSTL.com. Ackerman Toyota is number one in sales for 2024. That is 2 years in a row. It's really no surprise. Ackerman has the largest customer lounge where you can relax, take your time choosing new or premium pre-owned. Ackerman at Hampton and 44. AckermanToyota.com. Thank you for making Ackerman Toyota number one 2 years in a row. AckermanToyota.com. Ackerman Toyota for life. John Bill Roofing reminds you we are in the stormy season, and that means if you have even the smallest leak in your roof, you could soon have a much bigger issue. Call the John Bill to make sure that your biggest investment is protected. That call can save you major dollars. If you do get hit during a storm, John Beal has a rapid response team. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF, John Beal. Got a great fun idea for you. The Oak Street Inn and Lounge Speakeasy, now open, but you need a passcode to get in. Easy to get. Just visit the Oak Street Inn and Lounge Facebook. I got my code. Get yours. We'll gather at the Speakeasy. Oak Street Inn and Lounge in Cottleville. Plus, enjoy some fine dining. Visit the Oak Street Inn and Lounge Facebook for your Speakeasy passcode. Oak Street Inn and Lounge Facebook. Get your code now. This is great patio season to enjoy any of the Cafe Napoli locations, including Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield. You'll be enjoying coal-fired pizza, nothing else like it. Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield. A few doors down, Lit Cigar Lounge, where you can enjoy premium cigars, whiskeys, watch the Masters, a major UFC fight, baseball. Check for details at the Lit Cigar Lounge Facebook. Lit Cigar.
This is News Talk STL.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Let me share this with you. There's a doctoral candidate in African Studies who's a dual citizen of the UK and Gambia. He's been at Cornell University studying, obviously on a student visa. Well, he's going to leave the U.S., going to self-deport himself because he's also been taking part in some of the pro-Palestinian protests against Israel and basically in support of Hamas. And it's been made very clear those students could lose their visas, their work permits, green cards. They could be deported. So he's going to self-deport himself. And you know why? Because he's fearful that he might be subject to an attack by those who don't like him. How the hell do you think the Jews feel when you're out there on your campus doing what you've been doing? Joining us to set the record straight, we've had him on before, great guest, Kenneth Abramovich, author of The Multi-Front War, Defending America from Political Islam, China, Russia, Pandemics, and Racial Strife. Kenneth, welcome back.
Sure, great to be with you.
Let's deal with this student that is so fearful that, one, he might be revoked and kicked out, but he's also worried that he might be a victim by others who don't like his views.
Well, I guess nowadays everyone's a victim of someone who doesn't like your views. But he's a supporter of the Hamas death cult. I don't think people who support death cults should be welcomed on campus or welcomed in America. And so I'm glad he's self-deporting himself. He made a good decision for himself.
And he's not the only one who's done it. He's just one of many doing it.
Right. I hope them all do it. There's no room in a Western society, in America, for death cults. When you think of Judaism and Christianity, which is 90% of America, we're a living cult. We love life. We love babies. We do in a hospital. We do heroic things to save people's lives. That's in our nature. So when someone comes in and says, "Oh, I believe in death," you go, I think you're in the wrong society. I think you should leave and go to the countries that are run by death cults. If you like death cults so much, go move to Turkey, Qatar, Iran, Pakistan, and you can be with people just like yourselves.
And see if you survive. That's the other key.
Right, because death cults kill everybody.
That's exactly the point. And again, your accent's just a little bit. Some folks might be hearing you say death count. We're talking about death cult, a cult of death, which is akin to Planned Parenthood, in my opinion. Go ahead.
Well, also, if you go back in the time to biblical days, the pagans, were death counts. In other words, when you take God out of the equation, and by the way, you can also use as a synonym conscience. When you take your conscience away from you, or belief in God, however you want to look at it, then you can do anything, right? There's no Ten Commandments anymore. So the pagans, historically, and they're with us today, reject the Ten Commandments. And you can't be in a Judeo-Christian country which believes in the Ten Commandments and then say, I hate the Ten Commandments, and expect everybody to love you.
Well, but he's fearful that he'll be detained. He might be gathered up, put on a plane, and shipped back to Gambia or maybe the UK or wherever. And he's also worried about his personal safety. How does that equate to the Jews on campus that he's been, and I'm not saying he's specifically been doing it, but with the groups have been spitting and slurring Jews on campus?
Yes, that's true. But bear something in mind. When he says he's fearful of his safety, he's projecting.
Right.
In other words, what he doesn't, because we believe in freedom of speech. I would argue we believe in too much freedom of speech. I don't think we should believe in the freedom of speech to support genocide, for example.
No.
But this society allows that. So he's not at risk. But he knows that he's hated by the society. And I think he made the right decision to, even though there's nothing going to happen to him, he's right to believe something could happen to him, and good riddance. I hope there's thousands more with him.
I have spent decades in journalism. I'm a firm believer in the First Amendment, and some things I have to swallow hard to accept it as First Amendment. But as long as, if they want to be preaching genocide, one thing, but when they start yelling and stalking and closing up and taking over university halls and offices and threatening the students on campus, their First Amendment, they just went beyond that.
Yeah, that's right. There's two separate issues. I interrelate the two. Bear in mind, I'm not a lawyer. I interrelate the two as a threat analyst, because someone who says I hate you, and then the next week says, and I have to kill you. I know what happens with this progression of hatred. In other words, hatred leads to violence. So from my point of view, if someone says, I hate you, there's no right for you should be living, do the following things, I'm so angry, that it leads to eventually violence. But in our society, we wait till it's the violence and then we arrest the person. We don't arrest person for saying, I hate you, or I'm part of a death cult.
And on his way out the door, he's complaining about colonized peoples and what they're doing. And, you know, what America's supposed to be free. He came here to be educated, to enjoy our freedoms, and then he decides to stomp on them because he knows in this nation, you can do it without being put down. You dare speak out against the president or the leader of Hamas or Iran, see how long you last.
Yeah, he's got everything confused. And by the way, it's purposeful. The pagans, I call them death cults, they come with a false narrative. And he has accepted the false narrative, hook, line, and sinker. But in America, as you know, we believe in life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness for everybody. I don't see the word colonization in that. You know, if I say to you, Mr. Colonized individual on your way to wherever you're going, America is life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. What are you going to dispute with that? I hate a society that supports life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness for everybody. So you see, he's a sick person infected by false narratives, and that false narratives created anger in him, which he takes out through his protests and perhaps future violent behavior.
And how many have gotten...
It's a sad situation.
Yeah, and how many have gotten rich off of what they've been able to do in this country, even with things that I would consider disgusting or I don't like, and yet they hate the country. How many in this country hate it so much, and yet we have so many trying to come into our country? If it's so hateful, colonized, and threatful, why are they still trying to come in?
Well, the same thing happens in Israel, by the way. People call America a whole bunch of names and Israel a whole bunch of names. And meanwhile, there's a waiting list of thousands of people who want to come here. So there's something like 90% of people are normal people and behave like human beings. 10% of the people, they're human beings in looks, but they behave like animals. And my feeling is when someone behaves like an animal, you have to treat them like an animal, as sad as that sounds.
You're listening to Kenneth Abramovitz, author of The Multi-Front War, Defending America from Political Islam, which is a key point we're discussing here, as well as China, Russia, pandemics, and racial strife. He is also founder of SaveTheWest.com. SaveTheWest.com. What exactly is that?
Well, that's a website I set up about 10 years ago as a public service. I write an article every 2 weeks, so everyone who signs up for Save the West gets my article every 2 weeks. And I suggest everyone sign up for the article, and then they'll learn over time how to save Western civilization. Basically, how to protect life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness for everybody.
And of course, you know that will also
criminals.
That will also give them a route to contact you and say, "I hate you. Get out of our country."
That's right. Also, it gives you a lead into Amazon to buy my book, The Multi-Front War, and basically learn more about how to save Western civilization, which is just a fancy term for democracy. It's about how to save democracy.
And in closing briefly, how do you see the tariffs playing with the U.S. and other countries at this point?
How do I see the what playing?
The tariffs. How do you see them affecting all this change going on?
Well, the tariffs.
We're running up against time. I'm sorry. I threw a hard question at you there right as we get close here. I apologize. Kenneth Abramovitz again, the author of the book. I was afraid we were losing him. We were getting close to our time. I knew we were. The Multi-Front War, Defending America from Political Islam, China, Russia, Pandemics, and Racial Strife. And I might actually be to blame for asking a question that he was not quite prepared for, so put that on me, not him. But that issue is still going to be discussed in our second hour. And by the way, CNN is quick to report Tesla sales fell off 13%. Now, do you think it's because people aren't buying? Could be. Is it because they're fearful to buy because they might be attacked? They don't get into that detail. They just want to slide past that possible point. But coming up, Jasmine Crockett mouthing off again.
You can connect with Larry on Twitter at Larry Connors USA.
I've got a phone number for you and a website where you can take a free, quick survey to learn how to use artificial intelligence, AI, to put your company on a fast track to the future. Here's the number. It's a 636 area code, 636-689-0545, 689-0545. This is PRI Global. And recently, the St. Louis Business Journal named PRI Global as a leading IT consulting company. 25 years working with hundreds of companies, several Fortune 500, locally and around the world. PRI Global has its own AI lab to develop what's best for your company. Take the free survey and be on your way to the future. 636-689-0545, 689-0545, or go direct PRIGlobal.ai, PRIGlobal.ai. Looking for a great place to watch your favorite game? Lit Cigar Lounge in Chesterfield. TVs everywhere, premium cigars, special beers, single barrel whiskey. You do not have to be a member. There's a good chance we'll see each other at Lit Cigar Lounge. Plus, we can order from Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta. Our order will be delivered to our table within minutes. Sometimes hard to decide, but always the right decision at Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield. I have several questions for you, but there's only one answer. Who has the most 5-star reviews for windows in St. Louis? Renewal by Andersen. Who is the Post-Dispatch Window Retailer of the Year? Renewal by Andersen. Who is the J.D. Power Award winner 5 years in a row? The same. Renewal by Andersen. Dial pound 250 and say Windows. Pound 250, say Windows. Renewal by Andersen. A better way to a better window. Hey, if you're 50 or older, you do not want to take any risk with your money. In fact, you want Leslie Consulting. My friend Bob Leslie can show you a gain and retain plan. It means that you never lose. Plus, you get up to a 20% bonus on day one. Leslie Consulting, a leader in brokerage and risk management. 314-721-0066. LeslieConsulting.com.
This is News Talk STL.
Hit the road, Jack. Don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack. And don't you come back no more.
What you say?
Hit the road, Jack. And don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack. And don't you come
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
The problem that we have right now is that if we continue down this road, then we will not have a rule of law, because we have people that are currently serving and they're saying things like, ignore the judge's order. What it means to have law and order in this country is that you follow the order and you go through the appeals process, even if you dislike what the judge did. Thank you, and I yield.
You're good at that, but I'll take my own time. I'll recognize myself. And I'm going to note that when Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, or AOC as we know her, filed articles of impeachment on Justice Thomas and Alito, Ms. Crockett was one of the co-sponsors along with Mr. Cohen, both members of this committee. It does seem interesting that when the shoe is on the other foot, everyone is self-righteous. And I think this is a good example. For the last 3 hours, I have had to listen to one side talking about impeachment as though it was the nature of this hearing. It is not.
Congressman Darrell Issa putting Jasmine Crockett in her place. And how dare she? She does not have the moral ground to stand on, saying you must obey the judges. What about obeying the law? You were one of the ones pushing to defund police. You were the ones keeping terrorists inside our nation. You want to honor the judge. You want to follow the law if it's what you want. Darrell Issa is right about that, and that applies to both sides from time to time. It does. I call balls and strikes on here. If the judge is wrong, I'm going to say it's wrong. If Trump is wrong, I will say he's wrong, in my opinion. You have your opinion. You're entitled to it. But Jasmine Crockett, standing there like she is the high goddess to preach to us when we should be following the judges, when she won't even support following the law, aside from what a judge might rule. And in that midst, Hakeem Jeffries. Oh, yeah, Hakeem Jeffries. He spent 25 hours on the floor starting Monday night, and then 25 hours till 8 last night going blah, 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 blah. Why? He was just railing against anything and everything Trump has been or wants to do. It was not a filibuster. He wasn't trying to stop a bill from going on. He just wanted time. He wanted attention. He got it. And he got it from Larry Connors USA as well. We might even send you some diploma that we'll write up and give to you, Hakeem. But he said nothing other than blah, 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 blah. I mean, it's the same anti-Trump rhetoric recited over and over again. One thing he was trying to do with that is hold himself up as the next party leader. That's really what he was doing. He's up for election, of course, in 26, as is every member of the House. So he wants his name prominent. And for taking that 25-hour, quote, filibuster, though they don't want to call it that, he wants recognition and maybe praise from those around him. Some probably did. Some said, would you get out of the way? You're just making a fool of yourself. Now, take note of this. Hakeem Jeffries claiming that right now the Republican brand is rapidly disintegrating. Yeah. He was talking about 2 special elections in Florida, which the Republicans won, despite being outspent considerably, and the race for a seat on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. The Democrats did win that. And that was something we really should have won. So he says, based on that win in the Wisconsin Supreme Court and the fact that Republicans, even though they won 2 seats in Florida, which they already held, he's saying the Republican brand, the Trump brand, is falling apart. He's speaking to idiots that will listen to him. He said it was an incredible overperformance by 2 Democrat candidates in 2 ruby red districts. He's saying the numbers themselves show that it should have been closer and they could have lost. But they didn't. And in Florida, they were not going to get away with rigging the election. Wisconsin, I'm not so sure what happened up there. The liberal, very liberal judge won for their state Supreme Court. That person will be in position with the other Supreme Court justices of Wisconsin dealing with redistricting based on the next census and everything else like that. So it was a key position. In the meantime, from the state of Colorado, listen to this is good news. Good news here. A bill that would classify misgendering and dead naming as forms of child abuse or coercive control, that it could be considered in child custody disputes. The Colorado Democrats are proposing it. It is introduced, now going before the House Judiciary Committee. The bill basically ascribes to the false idea that one can identify as or become a different sex than they were born, often called gender identity. Why do I say this is good? Because it's going to be laid out in full so people get a full understanding of what they're trying to do with your children. My daughter sent me a piece from Florida. And let me see if I can find it. She listens on their app in Florida. Like I say, you can listen from anywhere. This dealt with a hospital that was asking parents after their baby was born for the parents to decide, I can't find the exact copy, for the parents to decide what sex do you want to assign to your child. Not even going to have doctors do it anymore. We're going to let the parents decide if he's got a penis, he's a boy. He doesn't have a penis, he must either be a girl or had some issues, health issues. But asking parents, you tell us, do you have a boy or girl here? In the meantime, go to the crazy state, California, rejecting 2 bills seeking to ban men from participating in women's sports. They did it yesterday. One of the bill's lawmakers voted to, quote, block what would have required the California Interscholastic Federation, the governing body for high school sports, to adopt rules banning students whose sex was assigned male at birth from participating on a girls' school sports team. The other bill would have reversed a 2013 law allowing students to participate in sex-segregated school programs, including sports teams, and use bathrooms and other facilities that align with their gender identity. Today I feel like a goldfish. Where's my bathroom? These bills would apply to K through 12 and even college students. Republicans immediately going against it, claiming this is not going to help women. And Democrats saying anything like this would be a cruel attack on LGBTQ rights and transgender if you start doing that. As one assemblyman said, I don't think anybody should be gender policing women and girls. What about boys? You're gender policing the boys, are you not? I will tell you this, that Democrat does not have a daughter playing in contact sports where they might be facing a male. I would bet you money on it right now. Republican Assemblyman says, look, the bills are in the name of fairness. Biology matters. Sports are one of the places where that reality is most obvious. One athlete testifying how a transgender runner took her spot on her high school varsity cross-country team, which means that transgender man might have a better chance of getting a scholarship than the girl. The girl said, why are girls being told that we must sit down and be quiet while boys unfairly get ahead of us in life? There was a time back during Gloria Steinem days and others that was being called outlandish. Women are being put in a hole somewhere. They were treating women just short of a Sharia law as we have under the Muslims right now. Women, you don't speak, you don't say a word one unless you're spoken to, and you have no rights. I remember specifically in Texas for the first time hearing that a woman could not draw a loan. She could not go to the bank and get a loan. She had no, quote, soul, as in S-O-U-L, but also as S-O-L-E in the sense of the law. There was no way a bank could give a woman a loan. She could get it if a man would co-sign with her. Her father, brother, or whatever else. But feminine soul not being acceptable. We came all the way from that to giving women due and proper rights, just as we did with blacks, just as we do with everyone of any religion, color. You have your rights. And yes, transgenders have, quote, their rights, but it does not come at the expense of others' rights. I got to watching a movie I hadn't seen in a long time last night. The Harder They Fall. It is a story based on all black characters, except for one part, where they go to a place called Maytown to rob a bank. They're trying to create their own town, their own community. It's all black. They're all country. They're Western. They're growing. It's the frontier. Well, to get extra money because it got stolen by another gang, they're going to Maytown. And as they ride in their town, Redwood, I believe it's called, everything, all the buildings are different colors and beautiful and everything else. And then you go to the western town where they're going to rob this bank, and there's a slogan that appears, a logo, this is a white town. Everything is white or bland or indifferent, and they're nothing but white lily people all the way around. And when one of the bank robbers dressed as a woman goes up to the cage and asks to make a withdrawal, they laugh at her. Well, ma'am, you have to have money to get any money here. That's when they pull the gun. So you get the money. Coming up, though, I want to go back to briefly about how our nation needs to take our signals from what we're seeing happen in Europe and even Great Britain right now. In particular, a toddler, 2 to 4 years old, suspended, a 2 to 4 year old suspended because of being a transphobic? That story when we continue.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
The Napoli heritage of fine dining continues with Napoli Kirkwood. Napoli Kirkwood, now open. So add that to Cafe Napoli in Clayton, Napoli 2 in Town and Country, Napoli 3 in St. Charles, right next door to Napoli C, and don't forget about Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in the district, Chesterfield Valley. All of those locations, plus now, open Napoli Kirkwood.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
A toddler was suspended from a nursery after they were accused of being transphobic or homophobic. I just cannot believe this. The Department of Education data revealed the child is either 3 or 4 years old. A D.of.E., a Department of Education spokesman, said all pupils and staff should feel safe. I can't believe I'm reading this, should feel safe and protected at school and should never face violence or abuse. The Education Secretary has been clear that she expects school leaders to enforce good behaviour, and we are committed to a comprehensive programme of behaviour to support all schools.
He's at a loss. That's a British broadcaster reading that a toddler 2 to 4 years old suspended being accused of being transphobic. No wonder he's at a loss of words. Oh, by the way, for those of you who think that Trump hates Muslims, take note of this. He just appointed the California State Assemblyman Bill Asaya as U.S. Attorney in Los Angeles. Bill Asaya, and I hope I'm pronouncing it right, is a Republican. Okay. He's also Muslim. He will be elevated to what they're calling the MAGA Muslim conservative to the most prosecutorial post in the nation, L.A., where they go after anyone they don't like for any reason, especially if you don't agree with them. Now he is going to serve as U.S. Attorney in Los Angeles and is a Muslim. Coming up, the tariff war and how we will or will not suffer from it. And remember our pledge, one nation under God.
You can hear podcasts of this program at Larry Connors USA Facebook. Larry Connors USA Facebook.
John Beal Roofing reminds you we are in the stormy season, and that means if you have even the smallest leak in your roof, you could soon have a much bigger issue. Call John Beal to make sure that your biggest investment is protected. That call can save you major dollars. If you do get hit during a storm, John Beal has a rapid response team. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF, John Beal. April is big at Lit Cigar Lounge, the place to be to watch the Masters, plus a major UFC fight, and of course baseball, all while enjoying a premium cigar and whiskeys. TVs in every direction. Make your plans. Check the Lit Cigar Facebook for more details. Plus, you can order food from Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta, delivered within minutes right to your table. By the way, we're in the season for great patio dining. Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta has your table waiting. Ackerman Toyota is #1 in sales for 2024. That is 2 years in a row. It's really no surprise. Ackerman has the largest customer lounge where you can relax, take your time choosing new or premium pre-owned. Ackerman at Hampton and 44. AckermanToyota.com. Thank you for making Ackerman Toyota #1 2 years in a row. AckermanToyota.com. Ackerman Toyota for life. It's that time of season when families, businesses are moving. For local or long distance, I endorse McGuire Moving. Get a date set soon before the schedules are booked. 314-241-0600. 241-0600. McGuire is constantly giving back to our veterans, such as Support Dogs for Our Brave. So with McGuire, you're getting excellent service and helping our vets. McGuireMoving.com. So many times, Vincent's Jewelers has helped me surprise someone special. Vincent's locally owned can do the same for you, and you don't have to break the bank to get something really nice, maybe even customized. The smile you're going to get back from that special someone, priceless. Check VincentsJewelers.com every day because new items are arriving and there are special deals. Vincent's, my only jeweler. VincentsJewelers.com. VincentsJewelers.com. I can tell you how to get a free quick quiz to see how artificial intelligence can boost your company's potential. You go to priglobal.ai, priglobal.ai. St. Louis Business Magazine listing PRI as one of the leading IT companies, and PRI has its own AI lab to develop what your business needs. priglobal.ai, priglobal.ai.
This is News Talk STL.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Got myself a gun. Mama always said I'd be the chosen one.
Over the past 4 years, Health and Human Services budget increased by 38% and its staffing increased by 17%. So now they are consolidating 28 divisions down to 15, 82,000 employees down to 63,000, and ultimately cutting $12 billion. But they say the funding that's getting cut now is not going toward COVID. The money is now bundled into programs that have since expanded to improve public health by adding surveillance for diseases like measles and mpox. It's now going towards addiction programs and violence prevention programs that look to prevent school shootings. And public health allows for many daily activities. So those experts say that you might begin noticing mobile public health clinics go away. That was something that was added after COVID to reach people without access to care. This also means that access to vaccines might get a little harder to come by. So they really just emphasize that COVID helped them get out of the dark ages when it came to treating outbreaks. They finally went digital with disease reporting instead of having to fax reports to the CDC. And now that that funding is gone, they're worried that a lot of medical modernization might go away with it.
That is a report on how the Health and Human Services Department is going to start returning some money that was designated for COVID use, and yet it was being used in all sorts of ways. And they're saying, oh, my God, if we don't have it, we won't be able to keep track of measles. We won't be able to do this. We won't be able to do that. And we've had something like 10,000 Health and Human Services workers laid off. Some might be hired back. Some were offered a buyout. But the bottom line is it's glutted. But there's another issue behind that. The Labor Department is another example. DOJ again uncovering this. The U.S. Department of Labor, Lori Chavez de Rima, announcing that her department itself, just her department, will return more than $1 billion in unused COVID-era money going back to the taxpayer. In fact, they say that actually $1.4 billion of unspent COVID money, as they're still trying to recover another $2.9 trillion. They add that the $4.3 billion was intended for states to use for temporary unemployment insurance during the pandemic. Instead, several states, we pointed this out yesterday, have several times before, but that MSNBC report was making it clear they're going to start looking at all this money coming back in. Well, in the Labor Department issue, several states, they can acknowledge, continued spending millions of dollars despite no longer meeting necessary requirements. This is kind of like I go to the bank and they won't cash my check. What do you mean you won't cash my check? You don't have any money. I still have checks. but you don't have money in there. Oh, I didn't know. Several states are still spending, even as I speak, and they're rushing it out the door, millions of dollars, even though they don't meet necessary requirements. The document pointed out that the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act in March 2020, thank you, Joe Biden, that the program was meant to provide expanded unemployment insurance for Americans who are not able to work during the pandemic. The program was closed in 2021. But a most recent audit found 4 states were still accessing the funding, so far spending over $100 million, even though they did not meet requirements. The Labor Department Secretary says there is no reason leftover COVID unemployment funds should be collecting dust. We're going to get it back to the taxpayers. Saying specifically, any money still sitting around for pandemic era unemployment funds is a clear misuse of your hard-earned tax dollars. Adding, it's unacceptable that billions of dollars went unchecked into a program that ended years ago. What are we here? April 2nd, 2025. Oh, if it had just been April 1, I could have said all this is April Fool's, but it's not. It's a fact. And here we are in 2025, and the program was closed in 2021. And yet they're still using your money. Now, how they're going to get it back to you, that's to be decided. Maybe it could be checks sent directly, but I will guarantee you if it's going to be done that way, it's going to be done with clear indication and knowledge it's going to proper recipients, not illegals and not duplicates. That reminds me of a story involving me and Joe Biden and a check I got from Joe Biden, the government, Uncle Sam. First of all, welcome aboard hour number 2, Larry Connors USA. We're here every Monday through Friday for you from 6 to 8 p.m. And when we're on the air, we are streaming video. You can watch the program. Go to NewsTalkSTL Rumble, Facebook, or Twitter. You go to Larry Connors USA, Facebook, or Rumble. And everything goes up later as a podcast. Available at NewsTalkSTL, LarryConnorsUSA.com, Larry Connors USA, Facebook. And if you have our new app, the new NewsTalkSTL app, there's a wheel of fun built into it. You can spin it around and you can pick up, you want to see or listen to previous programs and podcasts. Great way to do it. If you get that app, you can listen to us from anywhere. I mean, anywhere. All right, I'll finish a story about Joe Biden sending me a check. Not specifically, but it came from Uncle Sam. And this is Uncle Joe. I got this check, something like $1,000+ sometime last year, early in the year. I thought, why am I getting this? They don't owe me any money. What is this? I called my accountant. He said, yeah, that is part of the economic recovery program. I said, well, I didn't put in for anything. I didn't file any papers. He said, no, they're just sending them out blanket. I said, well, how am I supposed to do with it? Cash it. I said, am I going to be in trouble or anything? No. He said, everybody's getting them. A lot of people that don't deserve them. You will have to report it as income, which obviously I'm going to. They know that they gave it to me. It has to be considered income. I assume it still is, unless the law changed again. But that was part of the comedy act that Joe Biden put together. I quickly went out and took that $1,000 and lost it in a poker game. I'm kidding. I shared it with friends who wanted my poker money, not with my grandkids. Maybe you got one too. Well, you were entitled to it, and too many others were stealing lying to get theirs. Senator Kennedy is always good for giving us a lesson on real truth versus fact and fiction as broadcast by the leftist legacy media. Senator Kennedy on a rail on one point that I want to share with you. Once again, Louisiana Senator John Kennedy.
I want to try to put in perspective what many of my Democratic friends have been talking about today. They're very, very, very upset at President Trump. And they're very, very, very upset at Elon Musk. President Trump ran for president on a number of issues. One of the issues he ran on, he said it almost every day. He said, if you elect me president, I'm going to go through the entire budget and review all the spending, line by line. If I heard him say that once, I heard him say it 1,000 times. And that's what he's been doing. He went out and appointed, through an executive order, Elon Musk, who some people like him, some don't, but he's not a dummy. He's a very successful business person. He's got a top secret security clearance. President Trump issued an executive order, and he turned to Mr. Musk, and he said, Mr. Musk, I want you to do for me what I said I was going to do in the election. I want you to go through all the spending, line by line. Now, let me ask you something, Mr. President. How are you going to review the spending without reviewing the spending? How are you going to audit the spending by an agency without auditing the agency? That's what I mean when I say common sense is illegal in Washington, D.C. That's what Mr. Musk is doing.
Yeah, and they get upset. He can't do that. Yes, he can. The president, by his executive authority, can appoint Larry Connors to go into the Treasury Department, start sorting things out. That would be a bad idea. And I would understand if you railed up and complained about that. But you can't audit anything if you don't have access to the information. Riddle me this. Do you know any accounting firm that's legit is willing to go put their name, their reputation, their legacy on the line to go audit a company or a government agency without even bothering to look at the books? Of course not. By the way, this is worth noting. We're going to be talking about tariffs a little bit later, directly affecting us. In Argentina, they've had a poverty rate of around 53%. 53%. With the new president that was showing that he was kind of a Trump-style leadership, that poverty rate, according to new data from the National Institute of Stats and Census of Argentina, state that the poverty rate dropped from 53% to 38% in the second half of last year and bound to get better. Specifically, poverty fell for households and individuals by anywhere from 14 points to 15 points. 7% for households, almost 10% for individuals. The president, Javier Milei, says it's all a direct result of our effort to fight inflation. If they can do it, why can't we do it? Because Democrats want you to suffer. They want you to suffer. Well, we don't want to suffer. But you're going to have to suffer for the next few moments because you're going to listen to Jasmine Crockett.
The problem that we have right now is that if we continue down this road, then we will not have a rule of law because we have people that are currently serving and they're saying things like, ignore the judge's order. What it means to have law and order in this country is that you follow the order and you go through the appeals process, even if you dislike what the judge did. Thank you, and I yield.
You're good at that, but I'll take my own time. I'll recognize myself. And I'm going to note that when Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, or AOC as we know her, filed articles of impeachment on Justice Thomas and Alito, Ms. Crockett was one of the co-sponsors along with Mr. Cohen, both members of this committee. It does seem interesting that when the shoe is on the other foot, everyone is self-righteous. And I think this is a good example. For the last 3 hours, I have had to listen to one side talking about impeachment as though it was the nature of this hearing. It is not.
Yeah. He said, I've had enough of it, but I put up with it anyway. The question, do leftists really want gang members and terrorists in our nation? Well, they certainly try to keep them, don't they?
We have people criminally trespassing into our country, violating our laws, who are members and associates of the most violent, ruthless, criminal and terrorist organizations on the planet, that are implicated through their membership in terrorism. So illegal alien terrorists, and Democrats are saying, please set them free, please fly them back, please let them continue their criminal organization activity. The thing about these organizations, be it TDA or MS-13, is that they are vast networks. They have hitmen, they have drivers, they have associates, they have financial networks, they have traffickers. These are complex organizations.
Why would you want that group in your own backyard? They really don't. They don't want it in their backyard. They want it in your backyard. You were listening then to White House spokesman Miller. Let's continue.
What does the world see? What do the monsters see when they look at those military planes unloading in El Salvador and getting these illegal aliens off our soil, including child rapists, including stone-cold murderers? What does the world see? They see that under Donald Trump, that Americans are not sheep for the slaughter anymore. They see that you don't mess around with our people anymore. It's about damn time, Jesse. It's what Americans voted for. Don't screw with our people. Don't threaten them. Don't attack them. Don't invade them. Do not hurt them in any way, shape, or form. Because if you do, God help you. That's the message from the Trump administration. And it's about damn time, Jesse. I've visited enough family members who've had a loved one ripped away. And I'm not going to stand for it. And most importantly, the president, our president, the leader of the free world, is saying America is closed to murderers, gangbangers, and terrorists.
Again, White House spokesman Steve Miller, as he appeared on Jesse Waters. And he's right. We're not sheep for slaughter, which we would continue to be if Trump had not won. You do know that. And we also would not know how much money is being stolen from you, the legal taxpayer, and ending up in the hands of illegals. There was actually money for them to buy housing. MSNBC.
Last week, HUD Secretary Scott Turner announced that the agency had terminated FHA mortgages for illegal immigrants, saying, quote, at HUD, we only serve 1 out of 4 Americans that we should be serving, and that has to come to an end. And so we're not only making it a priority, but we are making that our only priority, that American citizens will benefit from hardworking American taxpayer dollars. Armstrong, HUD also says it's really unclear just how many illegal immigrants as well as non-permanent residents obtain these FHA-backed loans. What do you make of this?
Just imagine coming to this country with nothing, and all of a sudden you're illegal, and you got your mortgages guaranteed, you got the down payment, you're taking the risk, and this nonsense that they're going to pay them back. How are you going to pay someone back if you're not working? I mean, come on. It should have ended long ago, but these are the kinds of things that the Biden and Harris administration did in the dark that's finally coming to light, and that is ending as it should.
Good. Get rid of it. Liberation Day guest coming up as we start the tariffs. You don't want to miss it. How it will benefit you. Maybe it might hurt you for a while. Lock and load. Ready on the right.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
Question, do you know what vermiculite is? It is an insulation in the attics of hundreds of thousands of homes and public buildings. Looks like kitty litter, but often contains asbestos. Wellington Environmental is the largest company in the Midwest that can remove that hazard for you. Wellington has what is called the General, a powerful industrial vacuum that can suck vermiculite out of the attic. Hang on, there's something else you should know. Many of you might qualify for up to a $4,000 rebate. You should at least contact Wellington to see if you qualify. And here's something else. Wellington arrives at the time they give you, not sometime within 4 hours. 314-644-4930. 644-4930. WellingtonSTL.com. WellingtonSTL.com. Wellington Environmental. Your world. Cleaner, better, safer. And be well with Wellington. One of the greatest pleasures in life is giving. Giving something special to someone just because. Vincent's Jewelers can help you, and you should know that Vincent's has helped raise almost $2 million for local charities. Vincent's Jewelers, St. Louis's premier, full-service, locally owned jewelry store. Check vincentsjewelers.com every day for new items. vincentsjewelers.com. My only jeweler, vincentsjewelers.com. McGuire Moving is silver certified, which means they are great at relocating senior citizens. In fact, McGuire is a household name because McGuire understands the stress involved when moving older adults. So if you or family members need help moving, I highly recommend McGuire Moving. 314-241-0600. 241-0600. Get a free in-home estimate. McGuireMoving.com. There is a speakeasy in Cottleville, but you need a passcode. So go to the Oak Street Inn and Lounge Facebook, get your passcode to one of the hottest new spots in the area. Amazing food, 7 hotel rooms, 2-bedroom penthouse, and a speakeasy. I got my passcode. Get yours. Let's enjoy the speakeasy in Cottleville. You get your code by going to Oak Street Inn and Lounge Facebook. Oak Street Inn and Lounge Facebook.
This is News Talk STL.
There's pigeons down on Market Square. She's standing in her underwear, looking down from a hotel room. The nightfall will be coming soon. Oh my, oh hell yes. You got to put on that party dress. It was too cold to cry when I woke up alone. I hit my last number, I walked to the road. Last dance with Mary Jane. One more time to kill the pain.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Well, today is Tariff Day. Earlier today, President Trump releasing details of tariffs, but basically reciprocal tariffs is going to come down to. But exactly how are other things going to be affected? Well, if you listen to Trump, it's Liberation Day. If you listen to the Democrats, it's the beginning of recession days, many to come. Joining us to give us a better handle on it, and author of the book, Reshore, How Tariffs Will Bring Our Jobs Home and Revive the American Dream, which, by the way, Steve Bannon calls this book one of the most important books of the year. And joining us with the tales and the author, Spencer Morrison. Spencer, welcome aboard.
Hi, thanks for having me on the show.
So let's look at Liberation Day, as it is being called by the Trump administration. There is a lot of uncertainty today and will be for some time to come, because you can predict one thing and tomorrow it may or may not stay the same or shift. What's your first expectation?
Well, my expectation is that the reciprocal tariffs are going to come into effect. And what we should see is a very large reallocation of capital from investments in foreign countries back into America. And I think we've already seen a bit of that. I mean, the White House announced today that there's been about $5 trillion worth of proposed investments. So we should see more of that.
We've got companies like Nokia and others, Hyundai, also suddenly saying we will build plants in the U.S. and put everything into the U.S. To me, that sounds like a win.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the whole point of this, is to reshore the factories and revive the American manufacturing industry. I think it's really important to put this sort of in the historical context. Ever since 1974, America has run a large chronic trade deficit with foreign countries, in particularly China and the European Union. And if you total all the money from the deficits up and adjust it for inflation, it works out to over $25 trillion.
Wow.
I mean, that's an enormous amount of production
Almost our
that's all been
deficit.
offshored. I mean, really,
Go ahead.
exactly. Well, you know what? That's a really interesting point. And the reason it's almost the size of the deficit is because when we have a trade deficit, we have to pay for it, right? If we're not selling goods and services, we have to sell assets and debt, right? So in order to balance out the equation. So the reason that the debt load has been able to grow as it has is precisely because of the trade deficit, right? The accounts have to be balanced some way. So we're trading farmland, we're trading real estate, and we're piling on all this debt to pay for the goods.
But the other side of that is we were overpaying for what was coming into our country by tariffs that they were putting on us and goods going on. We were being victimized.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. And part of the problem is that the competition between America and foreign countries is asymmetrical, right? So when America, opens its markets and allows all these foreign goods to pour across the border, they're not doing the same. European car makers can sell their products in America. We can't sell our products in Europe. The problem is even worse in countries like China, right? So, this was packaged. All of this economic globalism was packaged as free trade. But it's anything but free. It's simply unfair. And what tariffs are going to do is going to level the playing field between American producers and foreign producers. And you know what? May the best product win.
And, during the 70s, since you brought that up, I had relayed the audience earlier. I recall specifically that we were not exporting enough beef, not enough American consumers as well, so farmers could not afford to feed the crops. They were literally with bulldozers digging pits, putting the cattle in and slaughtering them because they couldn't afford to feed them. And then, of course, we've also had in the past cases where farmers were basically letting fields be fallow because there was no market for their product if they grew it, cotton included. We have changed from then, but why do we still have apparently a mindset with some that was a good time?
Yeah, I mean, it's unclear to me. I think part of it is a sort of top-down propaganda. I think if you talk to most sort of local business owners, the sense that they get of the direction that the economy is going is very different than what we see being pushed out by Wall Street and by the university academies, right? And the reason for that is that this economic globalism, this global unfair trade, it lines the pockets of the people who benefit from offshoring.
Sure.
Right. The problem is that most people don't benefit because most people don't own factories. Most people, work for a living. Right.
Well, to that extent, listening to MSNBC earlier today, a great leftist propaganda machine, talking about how it's going to hurt the farmers. Farmers won't be able to sell their corn because if it's too high of a tariff within the country they're trying to sell to, we'll go to another country that has corn. Then it's only going to last a time, and then it's going to straighten out.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important for everybody to remember that we have had approximately 5 decades of this economic globalist paradigm, right? So what President Trump is doing right now is he's realigning the balance of trade, and there's going to be economic dislocation that occurs because of that, and that's expected. And the reality is that some producers of some goods, are going to be disadvantaged by this. But the question is not whether every single industry benefits. The question is, do the American people benefit? Does America benefit as a whole? And I think on balance, what we've seen is that the so-called free trade experiment hasn't worked. Right. So we need to try something else now.
Well, we know that they're going to be looking, oh, my God, people, I don't have a job anymore. I can't earn enough and so forth. And they're going to find those sob stories. But as you point out in your book, and again, we're listening to Spencer Morrison, book is Reshore, How Tariffs Will Bring Our Jobs Home, Revive the American Dream. While they're looking for those sob stories, they can drive right past a steel plant that's been abandoned for years because we no longer were doing our own steel.
Yeah, I mean, the evidence is all around us. We expect that the mainstream media is going to push for economic globalism. And that's not surprising because look who owns the media. I mean, it's guys like Jeff Bezos. It's the banks. It's BlackRock, right?
Right.
So they serve those masters. But an ordinary person could drive around, look at the town next door, and see what's happened. I mean, you got to ask the question: if there's this many dilapidated buildings, this many factories that have been shuttered, and this many people who are chronically unemployed, was the experiment successful? I don't think so. I think we've got to open our eyes and look at the evidence that's abundantly clear.
I would dare correct you, Spencer, on only one remark you made. Rather than driving around, they'll be flying over. They won't be driving anywhere.
That's true.
Now, CNN has a headline here. Some of the worst-case scenario tariffs could cost consumers higher prices on food, clothing, and electronics.
Yeah, that's not likely to happen, at least not in the long run. And we saw a bit of this back in 2016, right? I mean, the rhetoric is exactly the same. President Trump's imposing tariffs.
Right.
Goods go up in price. That didn't happen back in 2016, 2017, 2018. It just didn't happen, right? We have historical evidence that shows that the market adjusts to tariffs, and consumers simply switch their buying preferences.
And the very fact that some of those companies are now saying, why don't we just build it in the U.S. so we won't have to worry about the tariff one way or the other?
Well, that's exactly it. And that's why we've seen this $5 trillion worth of investment pour into the nation, right? All the European companies, all the Chinese companies, they want to get in while the getting's good. And now's the time.
The market's been up and down, up and down. Every time it goes down, they shout it from the mountaintop. But when it's moving up, crickets.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what we have to remember is that the people who are putting out most of the anti-tariff rhetoric, they benefit directly from offshoring and globalism, right?
Well, let me bring it down.
Again, a conflict of interest.
I'm sorry, sir. You're listening to Spencer Morrison, author of the book, Reshore, How Tariffs Will Bring Our Jobs Home. In the last 30 seconds, I'm going to ask you a personal question. Are these tariffs, would you buy a car or lease a car or just walk?
I would, when I buy a beautiful American-made vehicle and I continue to expect that those vehicles are going to do very, very well. I'm going to end you with this, okay?
Yep.
You'll still be able to buy the Japanese car. You'll still be able to buy the European car, but guess what? It's going to be made in America.
Yeah, absolutely. Or you're going to pay more. Tesla, by the way, is down 17%, but I think it's more because of threats than the economy. I really want to thank you for your time, Spencer.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll do it again. I'd love to, because obviously we get down the road, we'll have a better idea of how it's playing out. We'll do it. Spencer Morrison, author of the book Reshore, How Tariffs Will Bring Our Jobs Home and Revive the American Dream. That's what we all like to see happen. Still to come, let's focus on this issue MSNBC was raising about the farmers, and also the issue of Sharia law in the U.S.
You can connect with Larry on Twitter at Larry Connors USA.
Question: are you looking to unlock the full potential of artificial intelligence for your business? I want you to meet my friends at PRI Global, named by the St. Louis Business Journal as a leading IT consulting firm. 25 years helping local and worldwide companies. PRI Global has a free survey to determine where your company stands in your AI journey. You simply go to priglobal.ai, priglobal.ai. And I also have a phone number, so get ready to copy that number. And I'll remind you that PRI Global has its own AI lab, creating, adapting, developing, pushing the boundaries for what AI can do for you. Here's the number, 636-689-0545, 636-689-0545, or visit priglobal.ai, priglobal.ai. Here's great news. Napoli Kirkwood is now open. So that means fine dining right in the heart of Kirkwood. So you have the original Cafe Napoli in downtown Clayton, Napoli 2, Town and Country, Napoli 3 on the streets of St. Charles, right next door to Napoli C, plus Napoli Brothers Pasta and Pizza in the Chesterfield Valley. All of those locations, and now adding Napoli Kirkwood. What a great place to dine. Napoli Kirkwood, now open. Renewal by Anderson is having a huge sale. Buy one, get one 50% off. Renewal has the most 5-star reviews in St. Louis, is the Post-Dispatch Window Retailer of the Year, winning the J.D. Power Award 5 years in a row, plus the nation's best warranty. For a limited time, buy one, get one 50% off. Details at rbastl.com. rbastl.com. Renewal by Anderson. You've worked hard for your money, so protect it. Meet my friend Bob Leslie and ask about the Gain and Retain Plan. Leslie Consulting, 40 years in the St. Louis area as a leader in brokerage and risk management. Call 314-721-0066, 721-0066. Oh, and ask Bob how he was the L.A. Dodger #1 pick. LeslieConsulting.com.
This is News Talk STL.
Must be the whiskey. I've been drinking to remember and drinking to forget. I love you on my mind. I got Jim Beam on my breath, and loneliness has got the rest. I've got nothing left within me. It must be the whiskey.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
The point made by any farmer that you talk to of essentially any good is that there are competitors to American growers. And if you take corn, for instance, Brazil, and that other countries are able to turn to other markets. And even Farmer Bob, who voted for President Trump 3 times, said that there are still long-term consequences of the first trade war. Export markets, buyers overseas who turn to other countries instead of American growers. When you're looking at corn, for instance, 30% of U.S. corn is exported. When you're looking at pork, 25% of pork is exported overseas. And that is what they fear in the months ahead, and exactly what President Trump is looking for in terms of concessions from these vast number of countries that he's now beginning trade wars with.
That's MSNBC taking a look at the farmers' crisis. And the numbers, I think, are pretty correct. Pork, 25% that we export. And he mentioned corn as well. Let's say you are a pig farmer or cattle farmer, or you're dealing with crops or whatever. The farmers have to constantly, especially if they're farming crops, have to constantly deal with whatever God gives them from the sky or doesn't give them. Then you got to deal with disease. Then you got to deal with insecticides if they're going to be good for you, or if you use them, or is it going to be shutting down some of your clientele because you're going to have to list that you use that. Same thing, the cattle, if you're raising them on grass or you're giving them certain feed. This is a constant struggle for anybody in that business. They adapt, they make it happen. Could it mean a slight reduction for a period of time? It could. But there'll come a time when, again, the other countries recognize we're not winning this war with the U.S. They have more goods and can supply more than we can, and we just need to lower the tariffs to make it happen. That is all Trump is trying to do, is bring us to equality. Are you willing to go into the ring with someone that you know is a professional Floyd Mayweather type boxer, and you just barely figured out how to lace your gloves? Of course not. But we have, for 50 plus years, allowed the other nations to war against us. And, of course, the scaremongers come out immediately. Watching the stock market today and watching it tomorrow, they'll be looking for anything they can say, see what's happening? And they're going to ignore the good news that's out there. For instance, today, hiring accelerated last month. More jobs, more people hired, despite the hysteria over tariffs. Specifically, this is a source from I think they're actually quoting the ADP that's watches over the markets in general. Private sector job growth, not government jobs, which have been handed out like candy by the Democrats. Hiring coming in stronger than expected. 155,000 jobs added, even as corporate media and left-leaning economists warn there's going to be a big slowdown. Where did the jobs come from? Professional and business services. Basically, probably white collar, maybe some blue collar in. Then you have financial activities, 38,000, clearly white collar jobs. Manufacturing, 21,000. There's a lot of growth potential for the manufacturing jobs once we get some of these car makers that have been building them elsewhere now beginning to build them in the U.S. because Trump is putting on too high of a tariff. And if the tariff is too high, even though they like the car, not going to spend that money for it and get a totally, quote, totally U.S.-made car cheaper. But that also includes the fact that if parts are being made in Mexico or Canada and shipped into the U.S. to be put in, quote, that American-made car, that's going to kick the cost up as well. Our nation and our people are more able to adapt than others. If you missed it earlier, I was telling you about what President Javier has done in Argentina. And he is a Trump-like figure in Argentina. They were at a poverty rate of 53%. Imagine that. 53% of your population below a poverty level. And a poverty level in Argentina is well below what our U.S. poverty level is in this nation. What he has done in the time he's been in office, in the second half of 2024, they reduced that to 38%. What it meant for individuals and families, what they were spending was a decrease of 7% for households, almost 10% for individuals. If they can do it in Argentina, you know we can do it here if we get the naysayers out of the way. But as the markets, of course, were bracing today for the announcement, and what else is going to happen, diplomats are concerned and pundits are speculating. It's all part of the design. Trump has billed this as Liberation Day, a piece of branding with more substance and cynicism, according to some. In fact, a piece written by John Carney, not John Carney, who's the Prime Minister of Canada right now. It would be. I don't think it is. No, it's not. A Bloomberg columnist, I think, adds that this is a moment of unguarded awe, stating, and I'm quoting him, "I cannot recall the last time when so many people around the world were waiting for this White House announcement, where no one seems to know exactly what's going to be announced." Of course, that's earlier today before the president did announce how the tariffs will be done. And as they point out, this is not chaos, it's choreography. You telegraph what you're going to do. You may make some adjustments in behind doors discussions, deal making, which Trump is great at, and you may impose more for one country than another. In fact, generally that's where the consensus comes down. The richer countries will pay more if they don't change their tariffs against us. The poorer countries will pay more, but not as much as the rich. In other words, it will not be a blanket tariff regardless of your nation. That's common sense. And it is, again, a way to encourage American businesses. You stay inside our borders, you'll be treated royally. We'll reduce your corporate gains in tax and income tax again. We'll look for other ways by getting rid of so many regulations which stifle you, drag you down with red tape. We will find ways to make things better for you to be in our nation. There's not a single businessman, despite how much they hate Trump, that would turn that down. Unless they are so whacked out like a George Soros, they don't really care about Trump or the U.S. They care about a Marxist communist society. They're not going to be affected. Which brings me to those same thoughts from Marxist and communist. They don't like free enterprise. They want everybody to be equal. But name me one country where they practice Marxism, communism, fascism, where there is an equality. Even if they practice Sharia law, where's the equality? There's always one person, then maybe 5, maybe 20, maybe 500 that are better off than the entire populace. Why? Of course, because they're the leaders. They're supposed to have it better. You don't even have a bed to sleep in. You don't have any clothes to wear. They're living in these ornate palaces, even in Iran, except when they fear they're going to be bombed or hit by missiles from Israel or the U.S., then back to the bunker, deep in the mountain. I know you've seen pictures, what limited pictures come out of North Korea. And when President Trump visited, lavish buildings, ornamental buildings, the same in Moscow, in the Kremlin. They're not suffering. Their people are. And we have Democrats claiming that that's what Trump wants for this nation, that he will become a dictator. I've been running a commentary on that very point. Congresswoman Yaya Paul saying, I'm training Americans to fight for a war to destroy the Trump dictatorship. There is no Trump dictatorship now. There will not be a Trump dictatorship, but it would ruin her message if I kept saying that, because more folks might listen to me than to her, which would make you smarter. But she wants everybody to believe we've got to be ready for war against Donald Trump. Don't buy the lie. You can look around the world and you can see things of what could happen to us if we don't get the reins back in our hand. If you've ever ridden a horse and you dropped the reins and the horse felt you no longer had control of it, or even if you did, the horse thought it didn't like you on its back, it was going to brush you off against a tree, run you under a tree with low branches, swiping you off the saddle, you learn that you better keep a tight rein on that horse. Let it know that you're in control. That's not happening in a lot of these nations. You look at Europe. Look at Europe. Specifically, let's look at Britain. There's another place. A warning alert is flashing for our nation, for us to learn from it. Listen to this Muslim calling for Sharia law in Great Britain.
Enforce the Muslims to take up their British values. Now, we don't like your culture. We don't like your gambling and your homosexuality and your promiscuity and your man-made laws. We don't like that. I think what we've got is better. We'll keep to that. No thanks. We believe that Islam is the best way of life, and the Islamic way of life is the best. The Sharia is the best law.
Sharia.
We believe sovereignty is only for Allah, and this is why we stick firm to it.
Sharia is the best law. He is living in Britain. He's a Muslim. I would say radicalized Muslim. Not saying he's a terrorist, but he's living there and say, we don't like your laws. He said, you want Muslims to take up British values? No, we don't like your culture. Why don't you move? Why don't you move your butt out of there? No, because you want to stay there and destabilize Britain. In fact, you want to make it a Sharia nation. And you said, your man-made laws, we don't like those either. Well, then leave. No one's holding you hostage. He said Sharia is the best law. Some have estimated the way Europe is changing And it's wide open immigrations they had and, in fact, were encouraging until recently. Now they're beginning to crack down on it because they realize we're losing control of the reins of our horse, our nation, in Britain, in France, in Germany. So they're thinking maybe we need to stop letting so many Muslims in. That is Islamophobic, clearly, but I don't hear the left calling that out on them. In our country, Muslims are welcome, not denied because of their religion, but they must meet certain criteria like anyone we legally admit. But to show you how far they have gone, not just how they're going to lose their nation to Sharia law, not in 50 years, but maybe in 50 weeks at this rate. I want you to hear this report from a great British reporter about how a toddler is accused of being transphobic.
A toddler was suspended from a nursery after they were accused of being transphobic or homophobic. I just cannot believe this. The Department of Education data revealed the child is either 3 or 4 years old. A D.E., a Department of Education spokesman, said all pupils and staff should feel safe. I can't believe I'm reading this, should feel safe and protected at school and should never face violence or abuse. The Education Secretary has been clear that she expects school leaders to enforce good behaviour, and we are committed to a comprehensive programme of behaviour to support all schools.
He's stuttering at the end. I don't blame him. I mean, what else are you going to do? How stupid. Oh, I got one more stupid thing. This involves Tim Walz, his daughter. I don't like picking on children of politicians, but she's made this statement herself. She is announcing on TikTok she is not going to go to college, graduate school. She said, I applied for one. I had my heart set on it, but I'm seeing now that I'm not going to be allowed to protest and speak. I won't be protected like students should be, so I'm not going to go there. Go ahead. Go where you want. Go check with the Sharia law people. Remember our pledge, one nation under God.
You can follow Larry on Larry Connors USA Facebook. Larry Connors USA Facebook. This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.